Great Place schemes came out of the 2016 Culture White Paper. Significant second Culture White Paper ever to have been written and published, and the first for 50 years. So it was a real watershed moment of central government acknowledging that culture is pretty important. And in the Culture White Paper, they proposed this Great Place scheme to help areas across the country put culture at the heart of communities and celebrate their unique history, architecture and landscapes. It went a bit further than that. But where we are, we're one of 16, and we're in the North Pennines, which is how I know Chris, and also Jill, which is, well, I don't know Jill, but we're practically neighbours. We cover the whole of the southwest bit of County Durham. It's a hugely disparate county with all sorts of different bits to it. And even in our bit, it covers two very distinct type of landscapes. It's not entirely an area of outstanding natural beauty. Part of it is the wild fells of the Durham Dales, Teesdale and Weardale, where remote, socially isolated villages, farms, the biggest problem facing people is mental health issues around social isolation. The other bit of our area is the former Durham coalfield, the largest coalfield in the UK, which from the 50s faced an ongoing process of closure and consequent neglect. So we're dealing with two very different types of communities and two very different types of landscape. Our belief and what is central to our ethos at Northern Heartlands is a cultural landscape approach. The belief that all landscapes are the product of people's interaction with natural processes and forces over time. No matter how natural our landscapes might look, it's all about people and people continuing to change those landscapes. One of the areas we're focusing on is the hill farmers, who are facing all sorts of crises, not least because of the hot weather at the moment and the snow earlier, but also because of post-Brexit. It's quite feudal where we are. The current landowner is putting the tenants' rates up by 100% in some cases. Anyway, lots of different types of landscape, lots of different kinds of people. Our mission, delivering cultural activities that transform people's understanding of the heritage, landscapes and places they live in. That's fine. The difficult bit is the other bit, because what we want to do through that is build people's confidence and build people's ability to influence policy and decision making. We've got 3 years to do this. We've been going a year already. We've got 2 more years to change the world a little bit. So how are we doing it and what are we doing? Well, we spent the first 6 months wondering how on earth we were going to do it and what issues we were going to tackle. How we see ourselves is the hourglass model here. We're the bit in the middle, and I want you to hold on to this image and this thought. The hourglass, where the bottom is the people, the communities who are affected by policies and decisions. The top being those decision makers who often don't connect with the grassroots at the bottom. It's very difficult. There are processes, but they're not accessible. They're usually pretty tedious and boring, and they're usually pretty esoteric. What we're trying to do is find a way in the middle where we can facilitate that dialogue, both enable the people at the top who are often constrained by bureaucracy, legislation, into what they can do, and also the people at the bottom who just feel they're not being heard, and which has resulted in all sorts of issues and election results, I suspect. How are we doing it? A number of different strands to our work, but the 2 that I want to concentrate on in the next 5 minutes are the one at the top, commissioning, and the one at the bottom are speaker and discussion events. And the issue that we chose to look at, or one of the issues we chose to look at, was the planning system. Planning is affecting absolutely everybody in this country. I can't imagine that there's anybody who's not in a town or a village where some space or other isn't being built on, developed on, changed. And most people feel they don't have any say in the matter whatsoever. There is the neighbourhood planning process. It usually takes about 4 years. It's pretty esoteric. You have to be terribly committed, and usually people lose sight of it along the way. But we had a local village who were just embarking on their own neighbourhood plan. I knew of this theatre company based in Newcastle called Theatre Kappa Pi, and I knew that they had a show called The Town Meeting, and that they've been working with Dr. Paul Cowie, who's currently with the Centre for Rural Economy in Newcastle. He'd been interested in how communities organise themselves. He'd found this theatre company who were looking at the neighbourhood planning process, and they got together. And we used them to do 2 things. The first weekend, we worked with them, with the community who were embarking on the neighbourhood plan, to run their theatre show. It was a kind of role play session, really, a totally fictional situation which the community came and took part in. They had to create their own town, totally fictional town. They drew pictures, as you can see here, of their favourite building in this fictional town. They spoke about it. They were led through it by a totally inept junior planning officer, who was the actor, who took them through the process. And we were all asked to draw our favourite building in this fictional town. We then had to place the building on the map we'd created of this fictional town. By the end of it, we felt totally committed to this fictional town. We then found out that a planning decision was going to be made, and we had to organise ourselves to find out how we were going to respond. It was great. It was really good fun. Because it was fictional, people really got involved and committed to it. They made the decision that they didn't want the iron ore seam to be developed underneath the town, and the town to be demolished and reconstructed elsewhere, even though it might have meant economic survival. At the end of the session, a phone call came through saying the minister had already made a decision and wasn't going to take account of any of the thinking that had gone on. People were furious. The poor actor who played the junior planning officer was practically lynched. What do you mean? How can you do this? What about my car park that's here? What about this park that I created? You can't do this to us. And then, the following weekend, we translated that activity into the real situation in the village of Startfirth, where there had already been a housing development gone up like that, much to the annoyance of the local residents. And we took them through the same process, but this time it was real. And it was really interesting. We started out by talking about what they valued about their place, what they valued about their landscape. And people were talking in terms of, I like the view. I like the fact that it's peaceful and quiet here. I like my garden. None of which, of course, holds any weight at all in the face of a planning decision. However, because of what they've been through before, and because they realised the process, and because they worked out how to organise themselves in a fictional setting, they were able to apply that quite easily to the real situation that they found themselves in. On the right-hand side of this picture is Liz. I just want you to take note of Liz. I knew Liz when she was working on the tills in the local supermarket. She's Startfirth born and bred, and a great character. And she got quite heavily involved in this workshop. And by the end of the workshop, people were being able to think really permissively about what they wanted to do with their landscape. They were able to articulate what they valued about it. They were able to give really solid reasons about why it should be protected. But they were also able to see that development is inevitable. We do need housing, we do need businesses, and we do need to grow economy. But they were doing it in a way that helped them understand, because they understood what it was they valued about where they were. What we're also running, as well as the commissioning, is a series of speaker and discussion events. And following on from that workshop and that theatre company, we ran a speaker and discussion event on planning, a participatory art. It was a great day. We worked in partnership with the Town and Country Planning Association, and we had all sorts of people there. The Town and Country Planning Association, as you probably know, were pretty radical, and they gave a great presentation about the development of planning. Went right back to the diggers and everybody's right to have their piece of land, through to the inspiring Garden City movement, the artists, William Morris, Evo Carpenter, who created really good spaces for people to live on, progressing to where we've got to today in planning. Reference also to Grenfell in that presentation. It was inspiring. We used music, we used discussion, we went back and used theatre as well. And we got all sorts of different people coming together to talk about it. It wasn't just planners, it wasn't just developers. There were academics, there were arts organisations, there were residents and communities, there were landscape and planning professionals, there was the local authority, and there were an awful lot of artists and musicians in the room as well. All sorts of conversations came out of it. There we were, applauding. And there's Liz. Liz, having enjoyed the experience in the workshop and with the theatre company, agreed to read as part of the presentation. Liz was so inspired that I met her in town not long afterwards, and she told me that there was a parish council meeting that evening in Startforth, and she was going to go along, and there was a vacancy. And because of what she'd done, because she'd taken part in the workshop, because she'd been to the speaker and discussion event and read for us, she was going to stand as a parish councillor. And you'll be delighted to know that Liz got elected. So she now she's on that path of being able to, because of what she did, she's confident enough to be able to have her voice heard in the mechanisms we have available to us. So going back to that hourglass, in the middle, what we're doing, we're engaging artists, arts organisations, we're commissioning theatre pieces and all sorts of other things as well, which I'll talk about a bit more in my briefing session. And running those speaker and discussion events, that's the bit in the middle. We're working with grassroots, people like Liz, who are through that process becoming confident and finding ways to have their voice heard, recognising what it is they feel and able to articulate that. What's happening as a result of that speaker and discussion event as well, we're working in partnership with Town and Country Planning Association. We're now going to establish a national network for artists and planners. We're going to talk to the local authority. We spoke to them recently, and they've agreed to launch this in Durham County Council. We're hoping that Durham County Council is going to be the first local authority to have artists as a matter of course as part of their planning process. And it will also be launched nationally, hopefully in the House of Commons next year, a whole network. That's just one of the things we do. It is not all landscape-based, but it is about planning, it is about process, and it is about how people affect decision-making through arts and culture. What to take away? Consider using the arts, engage people with creativity, work in partnership, cross-fertilise, and always think outside the box. Thank you.